Uh, and welcome everybody to the October 17th Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District Board meeting. Steve Fancher, your chair. We do have an announcement to make just after we take roll call, so let's go ahead and get that started. Wendy? Oh, there she is.
I was turning off the heat because I can't hear anything. Nancy Hendrickson.
I'm here.
Steve Fancher.
Here.
Eric Mueller.
Here.
Dave Ritma. Just joining us. Come back to Dave. Seth Reeser.
Here.
Ashton Simpson indicated he was not able to attend. Lori Stegman. Here. Emerald Bogue.
Here.
Corky Collier.
Here.
Rochelle Altman.
Here.
Mary Helen Kincaid. Danny Stephenson.
Here.
Eric Molander.
Here.
Jason Dumont.
Here.
Ed Washington. Bob Salinger.
Here.
Heather King.
Here.
Dave Ritma.
Here.
I count 14 board members present.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, for showing up on this rainy afternoon. The first thing I'll mention here is that for personal and professional reasons, I've decided to relinquish my duties as board chair of this district. And I should say interim board chair of this district, as we'll all be transitioning on here soon to the permanent board. But it's been my great pleasure to serve you in this capacity in the past 2.5 years. And with only a few meetings left, we have some choices. I mean, we could go through a formal vote and designate a new chair, but we have two very capable and willing vice chairs in Nancy Hendrickson and Tanny Stephenson, and the three of us have met and talked about how we could support, they could help support kind of with me relinquishing these duties, you on into the last few board meetings. So that's the current thinking, the current plan, but again, open to this board's desire. With that, I'm going to turn this meeting over to Tanny to facilitate as vice chair. And go ahead, Jim.
I just would love to take, hopefully not very long, to express on behalf of the staff to you in particular, Steve, for serving as chair, immense gratitude and appreciation and respect. That goes to all of you as board members. I know this hasn't been easy, and you know, as a director, I've probably caused some headaches for all of you, but you've stuck with it and you've really helped lead this district into the next phase where we're more sustainable and stable and better able to provide the services the community expects. And so, Steve, on behalf of all of us who work at the district, you've gone above and beyond with your time and your care and your professionalism to try and help us get this hard work done. And so thank you. I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you, Jim. And yeah, I'll just turn that back around to the rest of the board and just say thank you all. We've been through a lot together. We still have some work to do. I'll still retain the Gresham seat on the board, but appreciate all of you and appreciate your attention and diligence in getting us through to the end here. Tanny and Nancy are going to kind of share in these duties, and it's Tanny's turn as Nancy facilitated the last one. But Tanny, I'll turn it over to you. I know you're in a remote location, so hope you can hear us okay.
Yeah, just bear with me. I just want to say, Steve, I think all of us are better because of your leadership. And so thank you so much for all that you've given to this district over these years. I think you've made all of us better. So thank you. With that, we'll go right into the financial presentation. Lori's out of town, but she's done a video for us. So we'll go right into that. Wendy, if you would.
Good afternoon. Your board packet includes the August 2024 financial report for the Urban District, which includes both monthly and fiscal year-to-date financial information for the consolidated district. Let's take a look at some of the key areas from the report. The district has $1.5 million in revenue for fiscal year-to-date, which aligns with the fact that our major sources of revenue, property assessments and flood safety benefit fee, will be collected later in the fiscal year. If you recall, this is one of the reasons it is important for the district to start each fiscal year with a beginning fund balance, to provide the cash needed to fund operations, including our busy maintenance season early in the year. The majority of our revenues to date are grant funds for capital projects, with revenue receivable for the 13th Avenue Pipe Project of $720,000, the Gate Tower of $362,000, and for PIR Pump Station of $50,000. The interest rate on our LGIP account is higher than anticipated in the budget, resulting in earnings that are higher than budget. We are starting to see declines in the LGIP rates now and anticipate that this positive variance will reduce as we get through the year. Intergovernmental agreements include $187,000 from the City of Portland and $10,000 from the Port of Portland. This slide shows the general fund spending results by budget appropriation line. These lines are the appropriation amounts with which we are required to stay within in order to comply with Oregon local budget law. First, you see the total annual budget by appropriation line. We have allocated the budget by month to support review of spending levels on a monthly basis. This column shows the year-to-date budget allocation through August. This column shows the actual spending for the first 2 months of the fiscal year. The monthly variance for August year-to-date is in this column. There are positive variances for the month on every appropriation line. This column shows the percentage of actual spending compared to the annual budget. For the executive director, the year-to-date spending includes personnel cost and cost related to our DEI consulting. The positive variance in legal reflects the timing of legal billings received for processing, and the positive variance due to the open position in this division. Finance and administration includes our administration, IT, financial services, board services, and human resources departments. The positive variance results from 1.5 FTEs in open positions and timing differences for materials and services spending. Planning and Public Affairs has an open position resulting in a positive variance for the year thus far. This division is also experiencing timing differences for materials and services spending. Engineering and Operations has 1.2 FTE in open positions, which is actually 2 full positions, one in engineering and one in operations, but is offset by summer help in operations and the intern hours working in engineering. These temporary positions were included in the budget. We are also seeing timing differences in materials and services expense for this division. For general fund debt service, there were no debt service payments due in July and August. Thus is a 0 monthly budget and actuals. In capital projects through August, we have had significant activity on the 13th Avenue Pipe Project and the Gate Tower Project. This slide shows the year-to-date capital spending in the general fund. You can see the major spending to date has been for the 13th Avenue Pipe Project, the Gate Tower, and the PIR Pump Station replacement. All 3 of these projects have related grant revenue to support the capital spending. We have incurred $17,000 worth of staffing-related costs on the general obligation bond projects through August. Our managers are currently finalizing planned project staffing needs to support the capital program in the near term. If you have any questions about the financial reports, please send those to Jim and Nancy, and we will provide information as soon as possible. Thank you.
I'm just going to dive in. And Tanny too, because we didn't want to go back and re-record the whole thing. So sorry about that, Tanny, but you are a co-chair now, and we want you to be included in any correspondence I would also take the opportunity to share, this is a new version of your financial report. It has more detail in it, and it's the trend we want to continue to move toward. So I would really appreciate, and I know Lori has asked me to seek feedback from you. If there are different things you would like to see or different summaries, please do let us know. We want this information to serve your needs to lead the organization. We hope you see improvement from past versions of the financial report and what you have in this packet. And we look forward to meeting your needs and the future board's needs with your feedback. So thank you. We can try and answer questions you may have. It's likely that we may need to document those questions and wait till Lori returns. She is literally on an airplane as this meeting is happening. So thank you for your patience with that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions they need to ask now, or can those go into Lori? Okay, right. Eric, I see that you're unmuted.
Yeah, Tim, what I'll do is I'll just put my questions into the chat. Some of them are quite specific, and I think it's going to be a better use of our time just to document those questions and then have you take care of it. Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Eric.
next
We'll try
item
and
is-
be very prompt in getting back to you.
Okay. Next item we have is the board financial policy discussion. And I think everybody saw some stuff come out in their packet. And Seth Reeser had some suggestions of some recommendations. And so with that, Seth, where are you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
And I do have some slides if I can share.
Andy, could you share there?
Settings for your stuff.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Can everyone see that?
There you go.
Yeah.
That's better. You were showing
Sorry.
the duplicate slide page.
My duplicate slide page. All right, I'll stay on this and I'll just try and make sure this is blown up. Thank you, Tanny. So I included a memo in the submitted memo in the board packet that just kind of outlines some of the ideas that I wanted to have the board consider. I've been working with Steve since probably May, talking about some of these ideas, and we've met a couple of times and solicited some feedback from Jim. And I know that Steve had reached out to his finance staff at the city of Gresham and also the Rockwood Public Utility District about some of the ideas. And so I've tried to incorporate all that feedback into what's coming in front of you. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the intent and the background for why I felt like this would be an appropriate discussion for the board to have. I think in the time I've been on the board, which has been coming up on 2 years, there's been some really good things, and there's been some areas where there's been some struggle. And so my intent is not to revisit a lot of kind of what's happened in the past, but it's more of an idea of, you know, as we're transitioning on leaving, I kind of think of it as, you know, we hit a couple potholes on the way here. It was a great job to get us from 5 districts to 1 district, but there were some things that crept up along the way. And sometimes when you're driving to the hospital, you don't stop and fill the pothole on the way there. And so we kind of hit a time where I think that it's worth taking a look at and going back to some of the stuff and kind of saying, we don't want the next person who comes behind us to run into the same difficulties if they are unknown. At the same time, I recognize that some of this work is not just for this board to do, it's things that are the new board is going to have to do. So that I kind of would liken that to, we're just trying to fill in the potholes with gravel and then they can pave it over. And there's some things that in the discussions with Steve and Jim seemed more appropriate just for the temporary board not to weigh in on and leave for the future board. So again, I want to foster some discussion on those topics. I'm going to briefly go over kind of why I picked these particular things. So the first one is there's a couple recommendations on awards programs, which are really centered around financial reporting. In looking, when we were going through some of the process of looking at comparator agencies around the nation and around the region, the organizations that apply for government finance officers certificate of achievement award for financial reporting and their budget award have much more detailed information that's much more easily accessible, that's useful. And honestly, and kind of looking at the ones from around the state, the ones that follow these practices seem to be like they were the ones that were well run, not just financially, but from a management perspective. And I know that that's, I think, an aspirational goal for where we all want the district to be going forward. Now, whether or not that was a priority 2 years ago, it wasn't, but it should be something that comes up as a priority for the new board. And if it's something we know is and can agree on is a worthy goal, I think memorializing that and providing some direction would be good. The other part is the budget award does require a strategic planning process, manual goal setting, and performance metrics. I know that there's been some talk recently about launching that with the new board when it starts in the spring. And I think that's a great idea. This would kind of, it's a prerequisite to receive that award because it is a best practice in financial management and ensuring that the strategic goals of the district and organization are met and reflected in your financial planning and budgeting documents. Community engagement. You know, I've worked for organizations that have run through the TSCC process, and I've worked for a number of organizations that have their own budget committee. My personal preference is I believe that having a budget committee adds a lot of value to an organization. It's critical to continue to reach out to people who aren't as familiar with the finances and operations as a board member would be. And that process of having to figure out how to explain it to someone in bite-sized pieces and chunks that's understandable has a lot of value. And I think that one of the ideas that came up in some of the discussions was, I know that there's going to be a bond oversight committee. And I think that having the bond oversight committee could function as the budget committee, and that would give them more empowerment because the budget committee does have a say in the appropriation levels of the operations. And it also would provide a better understanding of the whole financial picture, not just the capital money that's being spent, but also on the operations. For personnel, this one is, I had a couple of thoughts on things that I think would benefit the district moving forward. And the reason why is I understand that as a board, we don't want to get involved in the execution or in personnel matters. But when it comes to providing policy oversight, the personal policy manual is a good place for at least the board, probably not to develop it, but at least have an advise and consent role in what it is that the district's going to be doing in that realm. And that's really to set some directions, clarify expectations, and it really separates the board, then takes ownership of the what and the why of the personnel, and then staff is on the hook for who and how those things are executed. And we don't want to get into the who and the how, who they hire and how the work's being done. We want to get into the what the work should be and why we're doing it, why we believe that. And that again goes back to having the board fulfill a role in kind of more of a strategic or policy level. The rest of that, the compensation studies, salary schedule, extraordinary extra payments, is what I think is the bedrock of the board being able to fulfill an advise and consent role, and that is to be informed about what's going on within the district. So again, this is a topic that I wanted to bring up and get some feedback. I know that Eric Mueller had sent an email that also got included in the packet. I met with him to make sure that I understood his concerns, and it seems like we were sending emails past each other. I think we sent each other those emails within like an hour. So he has some very good concerns and ideas in that. And I'd like to, again, have a discussion with the board on kind of what the appropriate role is and whether or not these are some things we can put in place now. And again, this is as I thought through kind of the experience and what I wanted to leave, it really was a focus on, I don't want the future board to experience some of the same challenges and potholes that we have kind of worked through and encountered in our experience. I'm sure that they're going to run into other difficulties and run into other pickles, but it's kind of the same idea of if you hit a pothole, you go back and fill it in so the next person doesn't blow their tire out coming behind you. So that's the idea. I won't read through the entire memo, but I'll stop there and turn it back over to you, Tanny, for any discussion and questions and follow-up.
Okay, questions? Mary Helen Kincaid.
Okay, Seth, you did an incredible amount of work, and I really want to commend you on this because I'm the one that was probably most apt to be not accounting knowledgeable, and you brought a lot of issues that I had but couldn't explain to light, and I very much appreciate that. However, looking at your slide, and it's gone now, but there was like an ICMA, and then I didn't catch what that meant the first time in the last recommendation slide. So if you could just tell me, I don't know if everybody else knew, but
those were yeah, sure, I can tell you. So all of these were my goal with all of these was if there was a professional standard or some state guidance or regulation on related to these areas was to reference that. And one of them that I didn't include in the kind of in this discussion, but might be more appropriate for a board memorandum for something to look at for the new board would be ICMA is the International City Managers Association. It's professional managers and directors can belong to it, and there's some benefits to doing that. It's not something that I felt super strongly about, but it is something that might have some value, but it wasn't something that I had particularly encountered. But in running this past some other people were some of the ideas that might be worth having the new board look at.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing is I very much appreciate the recognition that we're all different. And we have come at this from different approaches, and I've been on many city committees, not necessarily related to finance, but bureau advisory committees, and was in the same position of having a lot of neighborhood citizen contact, but not any kind of county degree. So I appreciate that you recognize that variance is valuable to the board, and I think that we have that. And hopefully somehow can give that information to the next board that you need to listen to all. I mean, I don't know how to politically correctly say, but you need to listen to all the opinions because they all matter very much. And you need to respect the opinions of fellow board members because they may not agree with you. It doesn't mean that you can't learn from them. And I've learned a lot from people that don't like me and don't agree with me. And I think that that's a very valuable lesson to hold. So politically, I don't know how that could create in there, but I think that's been a very important thing. Thank you very, very much for your work.
Any other questions for Seth? Comments? All right. Oh, Mr. Molander.
I'll hold my question until Eric Mueller has a chance to give his perspective on this, if I might.
Mr. Mueller.
Well, I guess I necessarily hadn't thought about exactly what I would say. As Seth mentioned, our documents that are in the packet sort of passed each other. I had sent it in before I knew Seth had written his memo. Seth and I have talked about a number of these issues going back several months at different points in time. And so that's why I had kind of mused and put that together, and how it happens to touch on many of the same topics. But it wasn't intended to be necessarily a reply to what was in the packet a few pages beforehand. So in any case, I don't disagree with the overall sense that the board needs to have appropriate oversight. I think it's an issue of figuring out what the right level is, and where it transitions between policy and implementation, policy oversight, and management responsibility. And those can be debated at different levels on each of the different topics. As it relates to the suggestions, I mean, I guess my feeling is that this information, along with Seth's new slides that he had here, should all be bundled together, and it should be something that's on one of the new board's early agendas, because ultimately I think they have to come to a kind of wrestle through what it is that they need in terms of information, so that they feel as though they understand things well enough to feel as though they're doing their appropriate due diligence. And I'm not sure that we're in a position to answer that for them. But I certainly think a lot of what's been mentioned is useful information for them to consider as they try and determine what degree and detail of information they want, and what those expectations that they might have of the executive director and the staff in terms of policy oversight versus management implementation. So sorry if I rambled a bit there.
You're great. Thank you. Eric, do you want to go next?
No, please, Emerald, go, and then
Okay.
I'll finish up.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Emerald, if you would.
Thanks, Eric. I didn't mean to cut. No, I just wanted to say, hey, Seth, thanks. I think that these are, well-rounded thoughts, and I just wanted to clarify that they're advisory in nature. I mean, I think that we will have the work of the new board has to be first and foremost to implement their legal duties as laid out in statute, and also in the ballot language, which becomes the law. And so I think that they will have some norming to do. I think that this is input that is valuable. But I just wanted to make it really clear that it is advisory in nature, and it does not necessarily speak for the perspective. At least I don't believe that it speaks for the entire board. And I wanted to say that on the record. I think it's valuable, and it's advisory and a perspective.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Molander?
Thank you very much. So several points about this. Number one, I think that as we look at our role as a board and our ability to assess the effectiveness of the programs that we're putting in place, that it is critical that we have access to the information that would define whether or not we're on target or not on target. And so I think that the discussion between Seth and Eric Mueller has been an important element to that, in terms of helping us understand what level of detail is appropriate to make a true and effective assessment. Because we cannot shed our responsibility to assess the effectiveness of the organization. The second element to it is to recognize that we do need something that is either a budget or a finance committee that will help guide that discussion. These are very, very detailed sets of issues. Having people that are both, number one, trained in the area, number two, have interest in that area and willing to put in the time, which in many cases is pretty thankless. And then finally, that can speak clearly enough that they present their perspective and be able to say it clearly, even if it's not the majority opinion. So within that, Seth, I agree that we do need some form of a budget or finance committee and make that a formal part of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Steve?
Thanks, Tanny. I'll just first thank Seth for his work in this area. Thank Eric Mueller for weighing in. Thank all of you for contemplating this. You know, I'm not a financial expert by trade. I rely on kind of the expertise of staff and you as board. We have this particular board has more financial experts, I think, on it than any other board that I've been associated with. So from that perspective, we tend to dig into details at maybe a higher level because we have that expertise and folks understand it where I don't always fully understand the technical nature of what these guys are digging into, but they do help me. To Emerald's point, I don't know if there's a way for this board to feel confident that the next board will have this, you know, staff can make the commitment, or, you know, this board could take a more formal action just to have something contemplated by the next board, or ensure, I guess what I'm getting at is the next board is going to be very much benefited from any institutional knowledge they get from this board. And thankfully, we have Lori Stegman that is guaranteed kind of to have that continuity. There could be some others of you that are also providing that, and I thank you for that. But that's not to say that the new board is going to necessarily, you know, benefit as much as we have from the years of knowledge that we've accumulated in this area. So they are going to be starting off a little bit green likely, and could benefit from any advice they get from this board. So I guess I'm not sure what that mechanism is, but maybe I'm not thinking this board is adopting specific elements, but we're getting some type of assurance that the next board is hearing and contemplating. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Steve. Lori Stegman?
Thank you. It appears that I am running unchallenged. Apologies for being off camera. I've got a cold. But I would be, assuming I am elected, I would be happy to carry forth recommendations from this board to the new board. So I just wanted to offer that.
Thank you, Lori. Emerald, you're back up.
I'm back up just to clarify. I was not suggesting that this board take a formal action toward giving advice. I think it is the role of the future board to receive any and all advice from the public and any member of this board. So I would take it almost as comment to the next board.
Thank you. Seth?
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up on Steve and Emerald's comments. When we originally started putting this together, I didn't really know who was going to be on the new board, and the fact that Tanny and Eric Mueller are both running and Commissioner Stegman's going to be on it relieves a lot of the. I had originally contemplated introducing this as a resolution so that it would be on the record and something that would have to be addressed. But I've had conversations with Tanny and Eric on this previously, and I'm confident that if they're on, this will be a priority for them. So that's kind of how, again, this started back in May before anyone had filed or any of that. So it's possible that it could be adopted. It's possible it could just be transitioned into a memo for the future board to take a look at. And you know, I had conversations with Steve, and I understand that doing a formal action on this is even when I was contemplating that, it's a little clunky, and I told him I would really have preferred to include some of these things in a kind of an annual performance plan or a council work plan that you would generate on an annual basis. We just don't have that mechanism in place. We didn't have that mechanism in place for our board. And that's one of the things that I would really like to see the new board do, is to have a work plan for fiscal year 25-26. It's like most of our councils or commissions work plan that outlines what the tasks and goals for the organization are, with some prioritization. Because I know that's one of the things that this board has struggled with, is there's so many competing priorities that all of us bring individually, and we never really had a good way to consolidate that, discuss it at a board level, and come to a consensus on these are what our collective board priorities are, which is kind of what I see a board work plan or a council work plan coming up with. So I just wanted to clarify kind of how this originally started. Again, it doesn't have to be a resolution, but I think that the discussion is valuable, and I'm willing to listen to whatever the majority of the board wants to do in terms of how to memorialize this and ensure that the work continues.
Okay, thank you, Seth. Bob Salinger.
Thanks. I appreciate the thought that's going into this. I think I'm on the same page as Emerald, though, which is that I don't think that we, as a member of this board and probably the next one as well, I just don't think we should be tying the hands of the next board. I think it's going to be a big moment for a reset. There's been so much change that now is finally manifested itself. It took a long time. I think there were a lot of challenges that this board faced that were very unique and made it uniquely difficult. But I think what the next board really needs is a sense to get itself grounded and kind of move into that next era and figure out how they want to do things going forward. So again, I appreciate the work that's going into this, but I really don't think we should be trying to pass resolutions that are going to tie their hands in terms of how they approach it.
Thank you, sir. Mary Helen Kincaid.
I just want to clarify, Emerald and Bob. I understood this to be advice, and I think Seth's comparison to potholes. We're not going to fill the potholes. We're not going to we're just going to say these are things that kind of like advice. And any committee I've been on that's stepped into replacing somebody, someone always has the advice to say, these are some of the things we ran into. Now I can choose to ignore them. An example of many times in city committees, I've seen a lot of council people just smile, use the term, just smile and say, thank you for your comments. And so I think that if we're able to, because Seth just said, he didn't started out with a resolution and then came to the conclusion of this would be informative. And I personally, as a board member, when I go to a new committee, it really helps me to kind of ground myself in not only the board policies, which are set, and I have no intention of suggesting that, but it's like kind of what happened and how did you get here? And these are the first, we're the first people that have done this, and and the bond measure is new to everybody. And these are things that we recognize as, like Seth said, potholes. And if we just throw the gravel on it and say, look out, you might break a wheel, and they choose to drive over it, so be it. It's their choice. So I just wanted to kind of add that from a citizen standpoint that doesn't represent a government entity, because I understand the constraints of being a government entity and having to represent your particular government. And so I appreciate all the different views that people have, but I think Seth did a great job of starting in May and bringing it forward to October and incorporating all the kinds of advice and changes that he heard.
Thank you, Mary Helen. I don't see anyone else. It's just, my understanding is this would just be advice and they could take it or leave it. And I think, oh, I'm sorry, Rochelle Altman.
Thanks. I just popped it up. So you didn't miss me. My sense from a few conversations and just my own thinking as I looked at the two memos is that it would take a significant amount of conversation for us as a board to get to agreement on all the different components and recommendations. And then even if we were able to get there, as Emerald said, it will be largely a new group of people on the board. And I feel like a lot of the recommendations and subtle differences between approaches kind of come down to one's philosophy of how in the weeds and how far down into the details of operations compared to policy a particular person and then a collective board as a whole wants to be. And so I think it would be useful to highlight these questions and issues that the new board that were highlighted by this board and that we recommend the new board consider. But I think it would be difficult, and my sense is not that useful for this board to make specific recommendations about how to resolve each of these different issues that Seth helpfully highlighted are important issues for a board to consider. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so it sounds like we're a little split here on this one. But would it be okay if we brought back something that was in a recommendation form rather than a policy form? Everyone okay with that? Mary Helen, your hand's up.
Yeah, Seth's doing thumbs up, and I was just gonna say, I think that, I think all of us, and we're all very different. I think that we would all appreciate the advice, and whether we listen to it or not, at least we can hear it. And so I don't know how to formalize that in technical language, but I think that we've all had different experiences, different levels of involvement, 2 years, 12 years, 14 years in this committee. So that collective, I don't know, some people are resisting, like, I think recommendation, Rachel used that term. So I think that if we're able to pass this on, I'm all in favor of it. And if Seth agrees with what that suggestion was, or those words are, I don't see any problem with just saying, here's things that we came up with and you might want to consider, and they can smile and say thank you and get on with their business.
All right, thank you. Bob, you had your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. Honestly, I don't think this is a good use of our time. We've been on this now for a couple of meetings already. And I think any one of the board members currently, or if they stay on or if they don't, has the ability to make recommendations to the new board. They're more than free to come and testify in front of the new board. They're more than free to send a letter to the new board. There's a lot of ways for each one of us to individually or in groups get our perspectives in front of the board. I think if we're going to make recommendations, I don't think we're going to agree on what those recommendations are. I think it's just going to be a lot of work to develop a set of recommendations that we can get to them anyways. And I think it's an individual thing. I don't see us coming to consensus on what we would recommend to a new board per se. So
I just want to say I agree with that.
Move on.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Nancy?
I agree with that too. When you said, Tanny, come up with some recommendations, I feel like recommendations have been come up with and are going to be presented to the new board with a huge packet of other things that we've talked about as well. Like other people have said, any member of the public can reach out to the new board as well. So I'm not really sure what you meant about coming up with recommendations next time. I'm not sure it would be. I think we have some perspective, and in an advisory way, it's already going to be included. So maybe we're done with this.
Seth, I'm gonna call on you and then we'll move on.
And
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I also,
Yes.
I also want to draw everyone's attention to comments in the chat as
well, I'm sorry, I lost the last part of that. The chat.
What was that, Nancy?
well. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that there are other comments about this in the chat as well. And so I just wanted to make, not everyone reads the chat, so I just want to make sure that that's being noticed.
Okay.
Great.
Seth,
I
go ahead.
just wanted to clarify. It's Nancy. It sounded like you said that there was going to be another mechanism for passing along that advice and information to the new board. I'm not aware of what that looks like.
No, I was saying that, well, I assume that the new board it's getting a packet of materials, which probably includes the minutes from the last year or whatever. So there's that. And then as Bob mentioned, there are lots of ways for everyone, including you, to give additional information to the new board when they come online. So I was just underscoring what I've been hearing is that we have spent a lot of time on this. Thank you so much for your work. It is a perspective, and I think we have that now on the record.
Okay, but I don't want to make an assumption that about what's being communicated to the new board members. And so if there's something that is being communicated and a packet being put together, I'm not aware of what that is.
We're developing a whole onboarding program and we're bringing in a facilitator to do the norming, Mary Helen, that I agree with you we need to do so people are respectful in hearing each other. And I think staff's prepared to commit, Seth, if you develop a written material and whatever the board wants, this board wants to do, we're committed to including materials for that board that any individual board member wants to include, or if there's another strategy. You've seen in my ED report the last 2 meetings that we're working on that. We'd love feedback from you on what items you think are important to share with that new board. We haven't had any feedback from you all yet, but there's still time. So we'd love to get more feedback on items that you think are important. We're also open to scheduling interactions in some fashion or another if that's useful for this board. So again, we're open to transmitting your wisdom and experience regardless of our feelings about it. We think that's important and want to help do that.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, so any board member can submit something that will be included in this. Right. If they wish
Just
to.
ask a quick question.
Yes.
If the initial board, and I don't remember the exact state code, I was just trying to find it and I couldn't. What was our purpose then, if not to advise or set up policy? I'm not even going to say set up policies, but my thought is that we moved from Levy Ready Columbia to the interim board, and that interim board was going to help shape or inform the permanent board. And if that's not if we can't do that by saying, here's, here's, like Jim said, here's our collective knowledge. If people don't want to join on that collective knowledge, I don't want to have to recreate what Seth said. So is there a way that we can say that Seth shares his document and I'll just only speak to myself, support his ideas? I'm not saying that the whole board has to agree, has to be unanimous, but is there some way that we can convey the fact if that was not our purpose, then I really don't know what I was on this board for.
I think we can submit comments and recommendation, whatever we want to, that'll go into the onboarding packet.
And I
Okay.
think if multiple people want to sign on to a particular thing, that could be powerful for the new board.
Okay.
And if it's individual, I think that could work too.
So we should communicate to Seth and say, we want to be a part of the suggestion slideshow that you made. Is that the proper course?
That feels like it's a board decision, not a staff decision, but staff is prepared to help facilitate and support board members and communicating to the new board.
Okay, well, I'm going back to why were we here? I guess, after 2 years,
know.
I feel confused of why I spent the time that I did to be on this board if I can't advise the setting up of the permanent board, which I believe is sort of the intent of the state code. So, okay, I won't take up any more time. I'm sorry.
Thank you. If we could move on now to the next item. Did everyone get a copy of the minutes from the September meeting? And motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the September 19th, 2024 meeting minutes.
And we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, who was the second? Sorry.
Bob.
Okay, Bob. So we have a motion by Eric Mueller and second by Bob Salinger. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, good. That one carries. And now, without further ado, we will move on to Mr. Bill Owen.
Great. Good afternoon, all. I offered a series of pages in your board packet that starts on page 34 of 65 for those following along in your PDF file. My intent is not to go through those pages individually, but I do have a short slideshow with some photos I hope that would be informative to you to understand what the status of those slides are. So Wendy, do you have that? Excellent. Okay, so next slide. So before I move on, sorry, this is an image. So you can go backwards. This is an image, obviously, of the Columbia River. The foreground is the image of the pump station number 4. So this is the site, thank you, that allows water to get up and over the levee from the Columbia Slough into the Columbia River itself. And I think a few of you went on a tour with us maybe 2 years ago now, and we actually got into that pump station. So next slide, please. So just I have a series of images to show you the types of things we've been doing. The image on the left are a bunch of there are 4 individual access gates that we've purchased. These are gates that you might see like up in the forest, the national forest. They're pretty stout and haven't been successfully tampered with. So we're encouraged that these gates will be installed and not vandalized easily. So those are 3 of them have been installed already. There's only 1 left there, and there's 1 additional gate that's going to be purchased through the budget you approved this year. On the right, there's an image of a gate, a vehicular gate that you pass through if you come to our campus. There are upgrades to the mechanical systems on there. So the gate is much more reliable, even during a power outage. So we're excited about that change. Next slide, please. Right, so this gets into individual projects. There are 3 projects associated with the FEMA levy accreditation efforts. These are projects that fall outside of the PMLS scope, and so we recognize there has to be work done in parallel to the PMLS. Top left is a cross section of a new version of the levee along Marine Drive. Marine Drive is the kind of grayish thin layer on the top left of that upper left-hand image. Thank you. And so the levee itself is going to be pushed out towards the landward side, the south. And the gray area of this image will end up becoming the new structural section. And so we have opportunities to do some more planting, possibly between that gray section and Marine Drive, if there's an interest for others for this district and others to do so. This widens this section of levee, which is important because on the far left side of that cross section, there are a bunch of animal burrows that can go 50, 100 feet into the ground, underneath the levee, which creates, you can imagine, seepage paths. If water gets up that high, water's going to go through those animal burrows and create risks to the levee. So our intent is just to let those animal burrows stay, because they're not going to go much beyond that, and move the levee off to the right. Let me jump to Eric's question here once I finish the slide. The bottom left is another levee project right next to our office. This one is distinctive in that the toe of the levee has eroded, and the dark gray and hatched areas are areas basically we're just going to we want to fill in to create a new or restored prism of our levee system, so it's stronger than. But the distinctive feature here is that we want to put we are interested in putting some additional material on top of that basic portion of the levee, where we could possibly put in some more vegetation that's more than just grasses, which is what the Corps' current standard is. So shrubs, potentially large woody debris. We'll have to see how this goes. As you might imagine, so the area that I'm talking about basically fills in part of the Columbia Slough. Right here is the lower slough, the one that's fish bearing. So there are several steps involved to fill in the parts of the slough there, and so we're just getting started and scratching the surface on what that would entail. The far right image is a shot of the coffer dam that was put in when we drained out the pipes underneath the gate tower. This is the third levee accreditation or third accreditation project that we need to complete. So we had a chance to dry out those pipes, put a camera inside, and do a video inspection, and that will help us decide what type of repair or replacement we need. That project will start its design work later this spring, once we go through the RFP and contracting process. Eric, do you have a comment about this or the previous slide?
Yeah, so just a series of questions about Northeast Marine Drive. That would be the upper left-hand side of this.
Correct.
First, does this reflect the 30% design status from the USA Corps of Engineers?
So these three projects have nothing to do with the Corps of Engineers PMLS projects. FEMA had gone through a process to identify a series of improvements that we needed to accredit the system. PMLS picks up most of those, but there are some that are not in here in that program. So this is one of them. And I would say this is 10% design, give or take, at this point. And so we're continuing through that process, and it won't be until late next calendar year until we have a final design, assuming all permits get through. I hope that answers your question.
It does-ish. Where on Northeast Marine Drive is this work anticipated to occur?
Yeah, this will happen right next to Blue Lake. So
Got it.
almost to
and
23rd.
Right, and this plan will have to be approved by FEMA at some level, like the 30% design level.
Yes, that they do need to approve it, and I don't. The short answer is yes, they need to approve the design. I need to check with Colin and others to understand what that sequence of steps are, but I appreciate the comment. I'll make sure that occurs. Okay, so next slide, please. So we're going to move on to the Portland International Raceway, or PIR, pump station projects. There are two of them. Both of these involve area just on the other, right next to, of course, PIR and the Heron Lakes Golf Course, former site of Penn One area in Vanport. This project has moved forward and just passed its alternatives analysis process. And the image on the left represents what we were considering as different sites for this new pump station. And for a variety of reasons, I don't have time to get into today, but I'm happy to talk to those who have the interest. We selected site B as in boy, and are starting forward to finish 30% design, which will occur in mid-January. This is all on the landward side of the levee again, so we don't have to deal with permits on the waterward side where this salmonid bearing waterway is. But there are pond turtles involved. There's actually an eagle nest that's federally recognized. So there's an eagle permit, which is a first for me. I didn't know such a permit exists, but we're going to work through that. And yeah, move forward. So we're just scratching the surface on this. We had to get the site design identified first, or site location, not design, identifies first, and then we'll move forward. The image on the right represents a graphic of the wetland delineation that was occurred as part of that project. But I put this in because we are also moving forward to start in on the forebay enhancements portion of this site, where we'll be doing a series of additional plantings and potential some sinusoidal changes with the channel, excuse me, in that pond. So that project is starting to move forward, and we should have our task order with our design consultant later this month. Mary Helen, do you have a question about this one?
Yes, I do. That is near the Vanport Theater site where we have signs installed. And I was contacted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Is any of that what? I have not had a chance to speak with her. I'm going to do a video call at the end of this week, first of next week. I had asked Jim about how it was interrelated with this project. I'm not really clear because on this map, I don't see where the Vanport Theater site is, because there's a lot of remnants close to below, like 6 or 8 inches below ground. So they would be considered historic sites when that gets, it's been nominated and we have to go through the process. So has any of that been considered in your work, or is your work separate from what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is asking me about cultural heritage?
Great question. I'll answer to the information I have. This project requires an archaeological assessment of the area, and that assessment has been done. I'm just waiting for their report. So they did a scan of this area already. The project site doesn't really expand beyond what you see here. And my understanding, Mary Helen, is that that old theater site is further north from here, past the trees in that clearing. And so we won't be anywhere close to that. However, there are opportunities to interrelate with existing activities that nonprofit groups are doing up there. And not only...
Okay, let me just ask, who's the nonprofit groups and who is they that did the archaeological survey? Because we have an official one that's on file with the National Register.
Okay, great. Well, let me circle back with you to get that
okay.
information.
Maybe we can talk later, but
yeah.
So when you say north, I'm having trouble seeing the fine print. Is north to the top of the screen, or like, can you do a pointer or show me where you think that the theater site is?
Yeah, my understanding the theater site is on above this image, and north is to the top. And so it's
over in here. Oh, I'm sorry. You can't see what I'm doing.
Yeah,
okay. Well, I just see like things running parallel and conflicting with other work. And I truly don't know what the questions are this woman has, but it sounded like they were doing something And now I'm hearing
Mary Helen,
this is doing,
they're part of our project team. They're not part of the core. This is a MCDD City of Portland project.
yeah,
And so,
she,
so we're attempting to ensure that we take advantage of all the great work that you've done and that we're aware of that work so we don't replicate it. And that was the nature of our subcontractor reaching out to you. And so we're excited to gain the benefit of your knowledge and to make sure
Okay.
we incorporate it. So that's what's happening here. We have the new program areas under the statute. We're now the new district. So we're trying to fulfill those obligations while we await the new board and get more specific direction from them. But in the meantime, you've been very clear. You have some great information and we really want to follow up and take advantage of that. So
Okay.
thank you for that.
So can I request, I'll do this. Bill, you and I talk about this further. I don't want to take up
Absolutely.
any more of the,
Yep, absolutely. Let's make sure that,
Okay,
go ahead and reach
okay.
out to me by email and or call and let me know.
okay, thanks.
Absolutely. So next slide. Oh, Eric, did you have a quick question on the previous one? Sorry.
Yeah, just in terms of timing, this is a project that probably will not be completed until 2026.
Yeah, 2026, probably not. We've not gotten a clear answer from ODF and W, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife about the timeline needed for permits. It could be 2 years to get some of the permits, so it may be beyond that. So what I am very attuned to is making sure that contractors for this project do not overlap contractors for PMLS. So that's very much on my mind.
Right, and so in the interim, we're still renting a pump from Hertz Rental that operates this, and we are confident that that's going to take care of all of our pumping needs through 2026 or 2027.
So that's two different topics. This particular pump station, PIR pump station, actually has both its pumps back in operation. You probably recall there was one of them that was removed for repair. That had just been reinstalled and reoperating as of this past week. So this is fully operational again. We are renting a pump for the Vanport pump station, which is closer to the Expo Center, and the Port of Portland is supporting that work.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That helps clarify those two issues.
Okay,
we did have a backup pump ready when we were only operating one pump, so that may be the confusion, and understandably so.
Yep. Next slide deals with an update on the PMLS project. And I'm just sharing two basic images here to indicate what type of work's been going on. The image on the left shows a lot of people with high-vis vests on, but this is a representation of the Corps' effort to do a site visit for their technical specialists during a value engineering effort. This particular location is right on the west end of the levee system, right underneath the railroad tracks, as you can tell. Yeah, so they did a VE, value engineering assessments very early on the project, as well as including this site visit. The image on the right shows a stakeholder meeting we had with the Corps of Engineers staff dealing with communications, real estate, and so forth. So Colin and others are available if we have more details on this, but just leave it to say that there's work is going on quite a bit behind the scenes with staff efforts to get our ducks in a row and support the Corps as this project moves forward. Next slide. Right, and this is my last slide. It shows a couple of different things. I'll actually start on the right-hand side. There are two images. One is a trailer, and one is what will be a version of our new truck that we have to replace. Trailer should be, I hope, is self-explanatory. The truck, I'll note, has a boom arm just behind the cab and before the flatbed. And that boom arm is going to be a little bit new for us because we've noted that we're having to deal with eco blocks and other items of similar weights more often now. And so having a piece of equipment that we can move more easily than bring our dump truck out and our big excavator to move those eco blocks, this is going to be a huge time efficiency improvement for us. So I appreciate your approval for this this capital investment, and I hope to share our version of this truck here later this fiscal year. The image in the middle is a really exciting version of an inside communications cabinet inside of a pump station, and it deals with our communications system that allows us to talk to the pump station and vice versa. So there's a series of upgrades to those communication elements all across the district, and this is what one thing looks like. The far left image, I want to make sure we highlight clearly. We were successful in completing the Northeast 13th Avenue Pump Station Discharge Project. What you see in that image, it looks like some pipes kind of stuck together. This is an outfall, what looks like the outfall from that pump station now. So water will come into those two smaller pipes and go laterally from there, and then come out some tiny little holes inside that pipe. And so the type of design will be less damaging to the bottom of the slough than just the former arrangement where it's just two pipes just sticking out and discharging directly into the slough. So this image shows the diffuser, which is that pipe structure, being floated into position. It was submerged, and then some divers welded them together. So that project has passed its substantial completion stage, and we're in closeout now. So big deal for us, and we're really excited about wrapping that one up. I saw Corky's hand up first.
Yeah, Bill, that boom arm on the truck is a fantastic idea. It looks a little lightweight, especially for being on a muddy slope. So tell me I'm being silly and checked it all out and experimented with it. And then of course it worked great.
Yeah, so most times this will be on in the right of way in most cases. So it's not an issue. That part is an issue. I've been trusting our operations staff to think about those things, but I will definitely pass along that observation and make sure that it can be used effectively in gravel and possibly even on side slopes. And
but it's thinking outside the box for new challenges. So great. I applaud the effort.
Yep. Thank you. Eric.
So one of the major issues that we have coming up is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 30% design. And maybe either you or Raquel could answer the question of this. Are we on target for us having a report out from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on their 30% design? And are they going to have any sort of formal presentation to the board about what's included or not included in that 30% design?
Excellent question. I honestly don't know the answer, but Colin is on line, and I'm hopeful that he may have some information.
So short answer is yes, they are on target, and a lot of that is controlled by a preset timeline on the pre-construction engineering design timeline that they have, which is roughly about 3.5, 4 years. So they are making good progress on that. A lot of that work is focused on the real estate needs. And so that is a significant effort to really identify all of the real estate issues, or not even issues, but just what needs to be acquired in order to move the project forward. They have been working with a number of organizations, including the utilities, City of Portland, and others on the actual street design, I think where you're thinking of as far as Marine Drive in Bridgeton Road. So as far as a design report, that is not part of their scope, but we have been able to work with them where they'll be able to have some conversations as far as what that will look like, right? So actually having some type of mock-up of that sort of street profile so that they'll be able to take in comments on that work, but there's not the sign off on that is really with the operations and maintenance and people that basically will inherit that work, and especially at that 30% design, there's not a public report that is produced.
Right. So, well, since we will inherit that design, do you intend on making a presentation to the board about that?
Yes. So yes. So I think that in short is that right now we're working on having a series of updates that will go out. And again, this is in the spring, so it's a number of months away. But yes, there will be some public element that the board will be able to provide. The real estate work will be done in executive session, and then any decisions that are made will be in a public session. And then I think one thing that is also important, the Penn 2 board did sign a resolution looking for some coordination, especially with the neighborhood. And so that is something that the Corps is not open to, excited for, because that would be able to highlight any of the kind of operational or kind of livability concerns. And so that will also be taking place. So I can follow up with you and Walter a little bit more on that, Eric.
That'd be perfect, because at this point it's still very much an issue where the public is looking for the urban to provide leadership and around communications on what that design is going to end up looking like. And as the Corps hits that 30% mark, which will now really be toward February, or is it really October?
Sorry, October. No, the 30% designs for the spring.
Okay, got it. So federal Q3, not what the public would view as the third quarter of the calendar year. Got it. Okay, thank you.
And I think just one other piece that we're really sensitive to, because that just as you noted, Eric, the district is responsible for the public relations, the communications, and really making sure that our public's needs are met. And so part of that is a challenge where there's a lot going on that is extremely technical around stormwater movement and things like that. And that's really not very satisfactory as far as bringing that to a public meeting and recognizing, just saying that there isn't anything and not being able to say when there will be something is also a challenge. So early next month, we're due to have an updated calendar. And I think being able to provide that, for example, at the Bridgeton Neighborhood Association, so that we can really highlight when the team will be able to provide that information. And just another note for this board, and I think big kudos, there's 2 new key players from the city. Brooke Jordan, who has really taken a strong role that previously Patrick Sweeney had done, and she's fully up to speed and is doing great. Of course, Rochelle has been amazing at coordinating all the pieces, especially at the city. And then there's a new project manager with the Corps, Dave Empel, who he was at the Bridgeton neighborhood open the meeting that was on Tuesday. And so he just was there to introduce himself, but he's also excited to really have a community to be the face of the project, the Corps project.
Mr. Chair, that concludes my update. Thanks for the time.
All right, thank you. Colin, you're up next. Do you want to consider moving the revenue update to a future meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
We can move that or I can do a very short update on that, but I will definitely be done by 2:30.
Okay.
Um, and so yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick update on the legislative concept. So during the development of the capital funding package last fall and into the winter, there was $45 million of state grants that was identified as a necessary part of that package to make the whole piece move forward politically. In February of 2024, the mayors and principals of all of our partner agencies signed a letter committing to a request of that $45 million to the state. And we had ongoing conversations with the governor's office and also received a letter from the governor where she committed to or noted how important funding these projects are, but not a commitment necessarily to anything particular, because that would be a legislative appropriation. But I have good news to share. We've continued that conversation, and we have support for this request of $45 million that will be in the 2025 legislative session. So we have sponsors in both the House and the Senate for that funding request, and really just want to share that is moving forward. We're extremely grateful for those sponsors, as well as the broader district legislative delegation that has all been paying attention to how important this work is, and the governor's office, who we have been in touch with and has been supportive of us moving this request forward. And of course, it is the decision of the Legislative Assembly, but I think we're in a good place to at least present this case of how important this area is to the state economy, and therefore really needing to have that strong state capital funding support to really have a full package that is both at the local, state, and federal level, because that really is how important this work is. And so any questions about the legislative concept and their request for 45 million? Great question, Eric. It's in the executive director summary. There's a note on the legislative concept. So Tanny, I'll leave it to you, seeing that there's about five.
Has a
Oh,
hand
go
up.
ahead,
We have a
Bob.
question from Bob. Bob Salinger.
Yeah, no, thanks, Colin. So that's good news. I'm glad to hear all that. I guess I'm still concerned, given what we're hearing about this legislative session from the governor's office on so many things, that they have a whole lot of unfunded mandates. They're not expecting a lot of capacity. And so, it sounds like you're feeling confident about this and that the governor is really there. I mean, do we have, how much of a commitment really is there from the governor at this point? Because what we're hearing from the governor on other issues right now is she's okay with it, being put in, but, we'll see we'll see where it goes. And housing is the priority. It's priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And so everything else is going to likely get pushed off the edge.
I can't speak to the priority from the governor's office, but Bob, I think it's a really great point that it is a pretty busy legislative session. And so one thing that is important that I failed to note is that what this request looks like is that $45 million is spread over 2 biennia. And so that is the 2025 to 2027 biennium, a $20 million ask, and then the 2027 to 2029 biennium having a $25 million ask. It would be it would be this legislative assembly that would make the appropriation. And so we wouldn't have to go back during the 2027 session, but it is reflective of just, well, 2 things. It's reflective of how busy this session will be in funding priorities. It's also reflective of being able to support really what we're looking at as 10 really focused years of capital projects. And so be able to spread that funding across a longer period of time.
Okay. It seems like we'll need some sort of legislative strategy, though, to push this through. I mean, it seems like we'll need a sort of an all hands on deck to, given how competitive this is likely to be. And I'm tracking a lot of $20-25 million proposals over the next biennium, and all of them are on the bubble at best, it seems like.
Yeah, I think an all hands strategy would be really helpful, and look forward to maybe talking about with you about some of that.
All right. Okay, with that, we'll just move that revenue update to the next meeting. If that's okay.
That works, does. And there is a memo
Alright.
in your board packet for that.
Yep. Okay, unless anybody has anything else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
First, thank you all for being here today. Steve, once again, thank you for your service as chair.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting for October. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all for your patience with my connection issues, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thanks for chairing, Tanny.